One of the surprising impacts of infidelity, especially when you're trying to rebuild things with your partner, is the way that it changes the image that you had of them. So much of the pain isn't even just about the betrayal, but it's about the disappointment. You thought that they were strong, kind, caring, and now, realizing that they gave in to these temptations, they look weak. They feel less caring. And for a lot of people, they just lose respect in their partner, which is a difficult thing, especially if you're trying to reconcile, because you are also often less attracted to them as a result. If you don't respect someone, it's very hard to be attracted to them. Sometimes it's not about the exclusivity of them being just yours, but it's about your own admiration for them being shattered. So what do you do when the version of someone that you loved, that image of them, is no more? It's gone. It can't fit the facts. I think the question fundamentally is, will you love the person who is there now? The person that you are now seeing? Because a lot of this is disillusionment. If you thought that they were strong, but they actually were weak in their cheating on you, then you weren't seeing them correctly. And so this weaker person, will you choose to respect them? Will you choose to love them? And seeing them clearly doesn't mean that you're seeing them negatively. You're not being pessimistic. You're just seeing them accurately. And it is possible that you swung too far to the other side. Maybe before this all happened, you were way over here, totally idealizing your partner. Maybe you've swung to this other extreme, and now it's like you're completely disillusioned. Right now, it's probably safer to be on the disillusioned side. But how do you start to go back to the middle and just see them for who they are and then decide based on who they are if you will choose to love them and respect them? And what's interesting is a lot of people, their first question, kind of the first layer of healing, is about trust. Will I trust this person? Can I trust this person? For a lot of people, the answer is yes. Like, based on the context and the situations they were in the past, they know that their partner, most likely, 99% chance, will not cheat on them again. Okay, cool. Case closed, right? No. The second layer is often, can I respect this person now? For some couples, it's easier to rebuild the trust than it is to rebuild the respect. And I want to emphasize how important it is to get the respect piece in place. One of the biggest predictors of a relationship not working is the presence of contempt, which is really just the opposite of respect. When couples do not respect each other, the relationship is almost guaranteed to fail. It's not even about the frequency of fights. That's not a major predictor. It's not about how frequently they're intimate. That's not a major predictor either. The biggest predictor is whether or not they have contempt for each other. So how can you move past the contempt if you're trying to rebuild? And there are kind of two ways. One is focused on building up the respect back to where it was. And then the other option is sort of lowering the amount of respect that is required. And I'll address that part first because it sounds counterintuitive. Like, are you saying I should respect them less? Maybe. I think it'd be helpful to ask yourself questions like, how perfect of a human being do I need to be married to? How flawless do they have to be for me to be respecting them? And it's very difficult in a video like this to get the right balance here, because half of the people listening to this will be giving far too much grace to their partner, and then the other half will be giving far too little. And most people don't give good advice because they tend to just lean to one extreme or another and are just projecting themselves. So this is something where you'll need to decide for yourself. Am I allowed to see this person fall? Are they allowed to falter? Are they allowed to be morally imperfect? But then the other side is gaining respect in them again. And this is a two-way street. On the one hand, they need to show themselves respectable. They need to show themselves strong. But then some of it might be reframing things in your own mind as well. Can you see strength in their vulnerability? Can you see strength in their willingness to confront the parts of themselves that led them down this path of infidelity? Is it reasonable to think that the mere effort to confront their own weakness is a form of strength? But on the other hand, you're not obligated to admire someone just because they're trying, or just because they say they're trying. Sometimes the respect really is broken too fundamentally. Sometimes the contempt is too high, especially based on the severity of the affair, the elaborateness of it, and so forth. And I want to say that you are able to love someone and still mourn who you needed them to be. And they have the choice to either become that person for you now, even if they weren't in the past, and then you also have the choice to become that person for yourself. Because I think what a lot of this boils down to is you viewed them as this rock, this certain thing. And then once they cheated, even if you believe it won't happen again, even if you're willing to forgive and move forward, it's like, where's that rock? Where's that certainty? Like, do you need to become your own rock? As corny as that sounds. Do you need to find certainty in a mixture of things instead of just in them? Partly them, partly yourself, partly broader community or institutions that you feel psychologically safe in. If they've shown themselves not to be good enough to be that rock for you, how can you feel safe? And I don't ask that merely rhetorically. I ask that for you to actually think about it. How can you be safe? So to give a couple of two-sided perspectives on this. On the one hand, disrespect often comes from having perfection-based expectations, but also sometimes disrespect comes because someone just disrespected you. Similarly, relationships require tolerance for imperfection to survive, and they require boundaries for you to be able to not be walked over. In other words, some people give too much grace, others give way too little. Strength can look like doing the right thing from the very beginning. Strength can also look like being strong enough to face all the ways that you failed, all the vulnerabilities, all the trauma, all the shame that have been repressed that led to the infidelity. And it's going to be your job to figure out which side of those coins you need to move toward right now. It's okay if empathy and attraction don't return at the same speed. They are separate things. Regardless of whether it's this relationship working out or if it's future relationships, it's just good to know in general that good relationships involve empathy, self-reliance, like independence, being okay on your own, and realistic views of relationships. As you navigate this, you're allowed to focus on who they are in their actions, not just on what they say they're going to be. Because right now they're sort of at this precipice point, in many cases, of they've realized all these ways they failed, and now they're either going to step up or not. And then you get to choose how long you'll be patient. But you can't know right now whether they will be someone that you can both trust and respect and love moving forward. It's often impossible to know without giving it time. And for some people, they feel like there's this permanent loss of innocence. Like, yeah, but I viewed them as my prince, or I viewed her as my princess. I think it's time to grow up and to recognize that stories with scars, love stories that have battle and drama and healing, are far more interesting than the ones that are perfect the entire way through. But then again, on the other hand, sometimes those aren't love stories at all. Sometimes those are stories of escape. You need to figure out which story you're in. I hope this helps whoever's listening to this kind of navigate these fine lines between trust versus respect and knowing when you're giving too much grace or too little.